Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Real Bible Study. For those that don't know me, my name is Danielle, and I am the Bible Study Facilitator. Um, and tonight we will be in Leviticus 23 and 24. You will read it silently while I read it aloud. But before we start, we're going to open with our prayer as we do every week. I'm going to say it, and you're going to repeat after me. Are we ready?
Yes.
All right,
Yes.
Lord, open our eyes
Lord, open
Lord,
our
open
eyes
our eyes
so we can see something we've never saw before.
so we
so
can
we could
see
see
something we
something
never
we've
saw
never saw
before.
before.
Lord, open our ears
Open
Lord,
our
open our
ears
ears
so we can hear something we've never heard before.
So we can hear
so we can
to
something
hear
we
hear
never
something we
something
heard
we've
never
before.
heard
never heard
before.
before.
And open our hearts
And
And
open our
open our
heart
hearts
so we can receive something we've never received before.
so we can
So we
receive
can
something we
receive
never
something we
we've
received
never
never
received
before.
received
before.
before.
Amen.
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 Telling y'all the prayer just tickles my soul. All right. So we're gonna begin in Leviticus 23. Are we ready? If everybody
Yes.
could go on mute so we don't hear
Okay.
the get it back into the headphones and then it'll be in the recording. But we good. So we're all ready. All right, Miss Maria, don't forget to put yourself on mute. Making sure
Yeah,
everybody's on
I'm
mute.
trying
All
to.
right. Okay. I'll give it a second.
Oh,
All right.
give me 1 second.
Just so we don't get the feedback for the in the recording.
Can't get it. Hold on.
It's okay. All right. So the Lord spoke to Moses, speak to the Israelites and tell them, these are my appointed times, the times of the Lord that you will proclaim as sacred assemblies. Work may be done for 6 days, but on the seventh day, there is to be a Sabbath of complete rest, a sacred assembly. You are not to do any work. It is a Sabbath to the Lord wherever you live. These are the Lord's appointed times, the sacred assemblies you are to proclaim at their appointed times. The Passover to the Lord comes in the first month at twilight on the 14th day of the month. The festival of the unleavened bread to the Lord is the 15th day of the same month. For 7 days you must eat unleavened bread. On the first day, you are to hold a sacred assembly. You are not to do any daily work. You are to present a food offering to the Lord for 7 days. On the seventh day, there will be a sacred assembly. Do not do any daily work. The Lord spoke to Moses, speak to the Israelites and tell them, when you enter the land I'm giving you and reap its harvest, you are to bring the first sheaf of your harvest to the priest. He will present the sheaf before the Lord so that you may be accepted. The priest is to present it on the day after the Sabbath. On the day you present the sheaf, you are to offer a year-old male lamb without blemish as a burnt offering to the Lord. Its grain offering is to be 4 quarts of fine flour mixed with oil as a food offering to the Lord, a pleasing aroma. And its drink offering will be 1 quart of wine. You must not eat bread, roasted grain, or any new grain until this very day, and until you have brought the offering to your God. This is to be a permanent statute throughout your generations, wherever you live. You are to count 7 complete weeks, starting from the day after the Sabbath, the day you brought the sheaf of the presentation offering. You are to count 50 days until the day after the seventh Sabbath, and then present an offering of new grain to the Lord. Bring 2 loaves of bread from your settlements as a presentation offering, each of them made from 4 quarts of fine flour baked with yeast as first fruits to the Lord. You are to present with the bread 7 unblemished male lambs a year old, 1 young bull, and 2 rams. There will be a burnt offering to the Lord with their grain offerings and drink offerings, a food offering, a pleasing aroma to the Lord. You are also to prepare 1 male goat as a sin offering and 2 male lambs a year old as a fellowship sacrifice. The priest will present the lambs with the bread of first fruits as a presentation offering before the Lord. The bread and the 2 lambs will be holy to the Lord for the priests. On that same day, you are to make a proclamation and hold a sacred assembly. You are not to do any daily work. This is to be a permanent statute wherever you live throughout your generations. When you reap the harvest of your land, you are not to reap all the way to the edge of your field or gather the gleanings of your harvest. Leave them for the poor and the resident alien. I am the Lord your God. The Lord spoke to Moses. Tell the Israelites in the seventh month, on the first day of the month, you are to have a day of complete rest, commemoration, and trumpet blasts, a sacred assembly. You must not do any daily work. You must present a food offering to the Lord. The Lord again spoke to Moses. The 10th day of this seventh month is the Day of Atonement. You are to hold a sacred assembly and practice self denial. You ought to present a food offering to the Lord. On this particular day, you are not to do any work, for it is a day of atonement to make atonement for yourselves before the Lord your God. If any person does not practice self-denial on this particular day, he is to be cut off from his people. I will destroy among his people anyone who does any work on this same day. You are not to do any work. This is a permanent statute throughout your generations wherever you live. It will be a Sabbath of complete rest for you, and you must practice self-denial. You are to observe your Sabbath from the evening of the ninth month of the month until the following evening. The Lord spoke to Moses, tell the Israelites, the festival of shelters to the Lord begins on the 15th day of this seventh month and continues for 7 days. There is to be a sacred assembly on the first day. You are not to do any daily work. You are to present a food offering to the Lord for 7 days. On the 8th day, you are to hold a sacred assembly and present a food offering to the Lord. It is a solemn assembly. You are not to do any daily work. These are the Lord's appointed times that you are to proclaim in sacred assemblies for presenting food offerings to the Lord, burnt offerings and grain offerings, sacrifices and drink offerings, each on its designated day. These are in addition to the offerings for the Lord's Sabbaths, your gifts, all your vow offerings, and all your free will offerings that you give to the Lord. You are to celebrate the Lord's festival on the 15th day of the seventh month for 7 days after you have gathered the produce of the land. There will be a complete rest on the first day and complete rest on the 8th day. On the first day, you are to take the product of majestic trees, palm fronds, boughs of leafy trees, and willows of the brook, and rejoice before the Lord your God for 7 days. You are to celebrate it as a festival to the Lord 7 days each year. This is a permanent statute for you throughout your generations. Celebrate it in the 7th month. You are to live in shelters for 7
but you don't
days.
get to take.
Drea, you're not on mute. You are to celebrate it as a festival to the Lord 7 days each year. This is a permanent statute for you throughout your generations. Celebrate it in the 7th month. You are to live in shelters for 7 days. All the native born of Israel must live in shelters, so that your generations may know that I made the Israelites live in shelters when I brought them out of the land of Egypt. I am the Lord your God. So Moses declared the Lord's appointed time. Toya, you're not on mute. Appointed times to the Israelites. Okay, that's it. All right, it's okay. So before I give the title, I forgot to ask, who wants to be my volunteer this week for writing all the scriptures down in the chat so people can have for their reference? Anybody want to give me your thumbs up, raise your hand. Oh, Marianne said she's going to do it again. All right, so Marianne's going to be our person. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Marianne's going to do it. Thank you, Marianne. All right, so if I had to put a title to this lesson, ladies, I'm going to title it, We Need to Talk. We need to talk. I saw a quote just yesterday that says, and I quote, and ladies, I'm going to say it slow. The same lesson will appear in different forms until you learn to respond differently. The same lesson will appear in different forms until you learn to respond differently. I said, my God, this goes hand in hand with the topic for Bible study this week. When you hear the phrase, we need to talk, what do you hear? What do you hear when you hear somebody say, we need to talk?
You're in trouble.
Yes, yes. What? Anybody else?
We need to sit down.
We need to have a sit down. So for some, it may mean they want to talk to someone about something that could be bothering them or could be making them nervous, and they don't know how the other may receive it. This quote and our Bible study topic has the same thing in common. They both involve communication. As soon as the phrase leaves one's mouth, the other may get anxious or nervous, waiting to hear what the other has to say. Normally, when someone says, we need to talk, Caitlin, don't forget to put yourself on mute, there can be a negative attachment to the phrase. And how you respond will be determined if you will have to deal with the lesson again, or if you will get the lesson, but in different forms. Whenever the term we need to talk is mentioned, some may begin to think, oh God, what did I do now? Or some else may say, so do we need to really talk now? Can this wait? Or automatically they go on the defensive because for some reason they may feel an attack is coming. As I read the quote, I thought about the different forms of the same lesson I had to experience. For me, my lesson was men. And ladies, we all know they come in different sizes, shapes, and colors. But after failing my lesson several times, I realized I was just experiencing the same exact man, but in different packages. When I finally said no to them and said yes to me, I no longer had the lesson appear in my life. As I prayed and asked God, what did he want me to teach y'all this week? He said, teach the ladies that the phrase, we need to talk, not only applies to them talking to someone else, but also to me talking with them. And when I tell them we need to talk, I don't want them to focus just on the talking, but the listening as well. In Leviticus 23 and 24, we're going to eavesdrop on some conversations that God had with Moses involving the Israelites. And we're going to see the importance of listening as well. Let's dive in. In Leviticus 23, 1 through 3, the Lord was talking to Moses, and he told him to speak to the Israelites about his feasts and the times each one of them will be held. He also told them that they could work for 6 days, but on the seventh day, they would rest. This would be the Sabbath. The Sabbath was not going to be a feast day, but it would be a day set apart to God. Centuries after this, when the Jewish people were scattered in exile, they started to meet in the synagogues on the morning of the Sabbath. The only appointed place for sacrifice was the altar at the tabernacle or the temple. Yet it may be that even before the establishment of the synagogue in exile, the Israelites gathered on the Sabbath in a holy convocation, meeting to pray together and hear from the teaching. The Levites spread around the land of Israel. But when the Christians today, they gather on an appointed day of the week, which is often Sundays, they gather that too. It's considered a holy convocation, a sacred gathering before the Lord. So when you start hearing me talk about the holy convocations, that's what we're talking about. So let's park here, ladies. The Sabbath is supposed to be a day of solemn rest. But like myself, some of you may feel that Sunday is the only time when you can get stuff done. However, what starting this Sunday, April the 14th, you pick a time to have a conversation with God and let him know, yep, we need to talk. Take this time and do like the song says, have a little talk with Jesus. Tell him all about your troubles. He will hear your faintest cry. He will answer by and by. Oh, feel your little prayer wheel turning, and you know a little fire is burning. Have a little talk with Jesus makes it right. Psalms 27 and 8 says, my heart has heard you say, come and talk with me. And my heart responds, Lord, I'm coming. That's Psalms 27 and 8. So ladies, I want you to make note that I'm going to give you these feasts. It's 7 of them in total. And they're going to coincide with what we read in the Bible. It's going to help break it down. So that you want to enter top of your notes where you are right now. I just want you to know that the first 4 feasts that we're going to talk about are all celebrated in the spring. The first 4 feasts are all celebrated in the spring. In Leviticus 23, 4 through 5, the Lord told Moses the day that the first feast would be held, the feast of the Passover. And it's going to be held on the 14th day of the first month at twilight. From my studies, I found that on the Jewish ceremonial calendar, the first month was known as Nisan. Passover was held on the 14th of Nisan each year. Passover was meant to commemorate Israel's deliverance from Egypt and with the sacrifice of the lamb for each family, show how the blood of the lamb averted the judgment of God for each Israelite family. The Feast of Passover clearly presents Jesus as our Passover, the Lamb of God who was sacrificed and whose blood was received and applied, so the wrath of God would pass us over. Let's park here. Ladies, the next time you have your we need to talk conversation with God, thank him for what he allowed to pass over you. My God, when I think of the could have beens and the would have beens, I can't thank God enough for letting the bad stuff pass me by. That is why I love God so much, because it was times in my life I was allowing my talking to control what I wanted to do, and I wasn't listening for guidance from Him. But He didn't hold that against me, and He won't hold it against you. He will do like any good parent. He will discipline you for a while, but He will never take His hand completely off of you. Psalm 63 and 8 says, "My soul clings to you. Your right hand upholds me." Psalm 63 and 8. In Leviticus 23, 6 through 8, the Lord told Moses the day that the second feast will be held, the feast of the unleavened bread. This will be held on the 15th day of the same month. And for 7 days, they had to eat the unleavened bread. On the first day, they should have a holy convocation, and they could do no daily work, but they could give an offering made by fire to the Lord for 7 days. The Feast of Unleavened Bread was a week-long celebration, the week immediately following Passover, from Nisan 15 to Nisan 21. This feast showed the purity Israel was to walk in, illustrating by eating only bread without leaven, because that was considered a type of sin, after the blood deliverance of Passover. The Feast of Unleavened Bread relates to the time of Jesus' burial after his perfect, sinless sacrifice on the cross, during which he was received by God the Father as holy and complete, the Holy One who will not see corruption, perfectly accomplishing our salvation. Let's park here. Ladies, we need to talk. Now, the leaven in the bread was a representation of sin and corruption. So that is why they ate unleavened bread. If a little bit of leaven could influence a whole lump of dough and cause it to rise and puff out, then my question to you tonight, ladies, is what type of leaven do you have in and around you that is influencing you negatively? What and who are you listening to that may be influencing your thoughts, your voice, your actions? More importantly, who are you talking to? Who is listening to you? What are you saying that might be influencing them? The next time you have a conversation with Jesus, ask him about your influences and listen for his answer. Titus 2 and 7 says, "Show yourself in all respects to be a model of good works, and in your teaching show integrity, dignity, and sound speech that cannot be condemned." Titus 2 and 7. In Leviticus 23, 9 through 14, the Lord told Moses the day the third feast would be held. The feast of first fruits would be held when the Israelites entered into the land that God gave them and reaped an harvest. They were to bring their first fruits to God. On the day after the Sabbath, they had to offer a 1-year-old male lamb without blemish as a burnt offering to the Lord. The grain offering should be 4 quarts of fine flour mixed with oil as a food offering to the Lord. The Israelites could not eat bread, roasted grain, or any new grain until this very day and until they had brought the offering to God. The day following Passover Sabbath was a time to give the first fruits of harvest to God. The idea was to dedicate the first ripe stalks of grain to God in anticipation of a greater harvest to come. The Feast of First Fruits relates to the resurrection of Jesus, who was the first human to receive resurrection. He is the firstborn from the dead. The offering of first fruits was to be celebrated on the day after the Sabbath that ended Passover and began the Feast of the Unleavened Bread. This means that the first 3 feasts on Israel's calendar, Passover, the Feast of Unleavened Bread, and the Feast of First Fruits, all happened very close together over a period of 9 days. Let's park here. Ladies, now that you're having your conversation with God and he's talking and you're listening, and you ask him about your future. Ask him what direction your career should be going in. Make sure you are on a path that he wants you on, because he's expecting your first fruit offering. And some, myself included, might feel like we don't have anything to give. But what if we can't harvest because we aren't doing the right work? I'm going to say that again. What if we can't harvest because we aren't doing the right work? The Israelites didn't have this feast until they came into the land of Canaan. See, they listened. And we know they fussed, they complained, and they wanted to give up. But in the end, they listened, because the key to this blessing was you will harvest when you come, not if you come. Psalms 128, 1 and 2 says, "Blessed are all who fear the Lord, who walk in obedience to him. You will eat the fruit of your labor. Blessings and prosperity will be yours." Psalms 128, 1 and 2. In Leviticus 23, 15 through 21, the Lord told Moses the day the fourth feast would be held. The Feast of Weeks would be held 50 days after the Feast of the First Fruits. And they had to offer a new grain offering to the Lord. They had to bring this from their homes. 2 loaves of bread as a presentation offering. Each of them had to be made from 4 quarts of fine flour baked with yeast as first fruits to the Lord. They had to present it with the bread. 7 unblemished 1-year-old male lambs, 1 young bull, and 2 rams. They would be a burnt offering, a grain offering, and a drink offering. They also had to prepare 1 male goat as a sin offering and 2 1-year-old male lambs as a fellowship sacrifice. The priest will present the lambs with the bread of first fruits as a presentation offering before the Lord. The bread and the 2 lambs will be holy to the Lord for the priests, and they could not do any daily work. 50 days after the Feast of the First Fruits, at the completion of the wheat harvest, Israel was to celebrate the Feast of Weeks, ladies, also known as Pentecost, which means 50th in Greek. Pentecost is often referred to as the birthday of the church because the church began on the day of Pentecost after Christ's resurrection. Let's park here. Y'all, some of you may already know, and some of you may not, but Sunday is my birthday. The Sabbath, the day that I'm supposed to get some rest. Now, I'm going to be honest. I'm not going to be resting the whole day. But what I am going to do is ask God, can we talk? And I'm going to first give him honor and thank him for allowing me to see another birthday. I'm going to ask him if what I'm doing so far is what he wants me to do. And then I'm going to ask him what he wants me to do for the next 365 days. See, because now I'm in a place in my life that if he don't want me to do it, then I'm not. If he don't want me to talk, I'm going to remain quiet. And if he just wants me to listen, I'm going to do that, because Psalms 39 and 1 says, "I said, I will watch my ways and keep my tongue from sin. I will put a muzzle on my mouth as long as the wicked are in my presence." In Leviticus 23 and 22, the Lord told Moses to give provisions for the less fortunate by not harvesting the corners of their fields when they reap. And they wasn't supposed to gather the gleanings, which means to collect the leftover crops from the farmer's fields after they've been commercially harvested or on the fields where it's not economically profitable to harvest. From their harvest, they were to leave them for the less fortunate. This repeats the command that we learned in Leviticus 19, 9 and 10. This was a law to provide means for the poor and the stranger to eat by working for themselves and the gleaning that was left behind. This was an appropriate reminder right after the law concerning the harvest feast of the Pentecost. Let's park here. Ladies, recently I heard a message that said you cannot complain if you ask God in one of your we need to talk conversations to bless you to be a blessing. Oh, because he heard your request and then he blessed you so that you would be a blessing. But the part that had me sliding on the floor was when he said, "Do you want to be the one doing a blessing, or do you want to be the one doing the begging?" So I'm asking you ladies right now, do you want to be a blesser, or do you want to be a beggar? Psalms 37:25 says, "I have been young, and now I'm old, yet I have not seen the righteous forsaken or his children begging for bread." Psalms 37 and 25. The last of the 3 feasts were all celebrated in the fall. In Leviticus 23 through 25, the Lord told Moses what day the 5th feast would be held. The Feast of Trumpets was to be held on the 1st day in the 7th month. They shall have a Sabbath rest, a memorial of blowing of trumpets, and they could not do any daily work, and they had to offer an offering made that was by fire to the Lord. On the 1st day of the month of the Tishi, on the Jewish ceremonial calendar, the Feast of Trumpets was held. Trumpets were blown together to gather the people, God's people, for a holy convocation. This is what we see on our calendars, ladies, as Rosh Hashanah. This is Rosh Hashanah. The Feast of Trumpets speaks of the ultimate assembly of God's people at the sound of a trumpet, the rapture of the church, and of the gathering of Israel for this special purpose God has for them in the last days. Let's park here. Ladies, oh, you are special. And you was created for a special purpose. But now I need you to surround yourself around other people who are special too. Other people who want to have conversations with God. And they also want to listen to what he has to say. People who want to gather and assemble, not for form or fashion, but for renovation, elevation, affirmation, and liberation. I want you to assemble around people who are not showing up to be seen, but showing up to serve. 1 Corinthians 15 and 58 says, therefore, my dear brothers and sisters, stand firm. Let nothing move you. Always give yourselves fully to the work of the Lord, because you know that your labor in the Lord is not in vain. That's 1 Corinthians 15 and 58. In Leviticus 23, 26 through 32, the Lord told Moses what day the sixth feast was going to be held. The Day of Atonement was to be held the 10th day of the 7th month. That would be the Day of Atonement. On the 10th of the Tishi, the people gathered again for a holy convocation. But this was not a celebration feast, but a day to afflict your souls in humble recognition of one's sin and need for atonement. Any person who was afflicted in their soul was to be cut from their people. And any person who does work on that same day, that person God would destroy from among his people. They could not work. It was a day of total rest. They had to observe the Sabbath from the evening of the 9th day of the month until the following evening. This day we know on our calendars, ladies, as Yom Kippur. The Day of Atonement not only speaks of the ultimate perfect atonement Jesus offered on our behalf, but also of the affliction and salvation that Israel will see during their great tribulation. Let's park here. How many of us need to take a day to celebrate? Not to just celebrate, but to reflect on the affliction in our soul. The things that we could have done different and should have done different. Our version of Yom Kippur. I don't want to be cut off from my people, but I'm not sure if everybody can go higher with me. We can't keep dragging afflicted souls with us, ladies, because it would be like dragging up because it would be like a balloon trying to go higher, and somebody is holding on to the string with their afflicted soul, preventing us from going as high as we could. See, we would elevate some with their weight, but we wouldn't go as high as we could if we cut them off completely. John 15 and 2 says, he cuts off every branch in me that bears no fruit. And every branch that does bear fruit, he prunes it to make it even more fruitful. John 15 and 2. In Leviticus 23, 33 through 44, the Lord told Moses the day the 7th feast should be held. The Feast of the Tabernacles was to be held on the 15th day of the 7th month. On the first day, they had to have holy convocation, and they could not do any daily work for 7 days. They had to offer an offering made by fire to the Lord. On the 8th day, they had to have holy convocation, and then they repeated what they did for the previous 7 days. The Feast of Tabernacles was a time to rejoice in God's deliverance and provision for Israel during the time of the wilderness wandering. A time when, having come into the promised land, looking back with gratitude on all God had done to deliver and provide in the tough times of the wilderness. The Feast of Tabernacles began and ended in rest. It was all about celebration and rest and refreshment. This day was also known as the Sukkot, Sukkot, Sukkot. The Feast of Tabernacles speaks of the millennial rest of comfort of God for Israel and all of God's people. It is all about peace and rest from beginning to end. Let's park here. Ladies, sometimes when we ask God, can we talk? The conversation can just be about how good he's been to us. We can thank him for the deliverance, for his protection, for his provision, for his healing, and for just being whatever we needed him to be when we needed him to be it. Use this as an opportunity for him to listen to us for praise and recognition and not for a need or want. Isaiah 25:1 says, Lord, you are my God. I will exalt you and praise your name, for in perfect faithfulness you have done wonderful things planned long ago. That's Isaiah 25:1. So while we are talking with God, we are realizing it's as important to listen as well. Listening for instruction can keep us out of a world of trouble. When we talk with him and ask him, we can't be mad or angry about the answer. God will sometimes give us instructions that are hard, but are necessary for our growth. As we continue on reading in Leviticus 24, we're going to see some instructions that were given that were necessary for their growth, but they were difficult. Let's dive in. So before we go on to 24, is there anything we want to go over in 23? Okay. All right. And it reads, the Lord spoke to Moses, command the Israelites to bring your pure oil from crushed olives for the light in order to keep the lamp burning regularly. Aaron is to tend it continually from evening until morning before the Lord outside the curtain of the testimony in the tent of meeting. This is a permanent statute throughout your generations. He must continually tend the lamps on the pure gold lampstand in the Lord's presence. Take fine flour and bake it into 12 loaves. Each loaf is to be made with 4 quarts. Arrange them in 2 rows, 6 to a row on the pure gold table before the Lord. Place pure frankincense near each roll so that it may serve as a memorial portion for the bread and a food offering to the Lord. The bread is to be set out before the Lord each Sabbath day as a permanent covenant obligation on the part of the Israelites. It belongs to Aaron and his sons who are to eat it in a holy place, for it is the holiest portion for him from the food offerings to the Lord. This is a permanent rule. Now there was a son of an Israelite mother and an Egyptian father. They were among the Israelites. A fight broke out in the camp between an Israelite woman's son and an Israelite man. Her son cursed and blasphemed the name, and they brought him to Moses. His mother's name was Shilemeth, a daughter of Dibri of the tribe of Dan. They put him in custody until the Lord's decision could be made clear to them. Then the Lord spoke to Moses, bring the one who has cursed to the outside of the camp and have all who heard him lay their hands on his head, then have the whole community stone him. And tell the Israelites, if anyone curses his God, he will bear the consequence of his sin. Whoever blasphemes the name of the Lord must be put to death. The whole community is to stone him. If he blasphemes the name, he is to be put to death, whether the resident alien or the native. If a man kills anyone, he must be put to death. Whoever kills an animal is to make restitution for it, life for life. If any man inflicts a permanent injury on his neighbor, whatever he has done to him should be done back to him. Fracture for fracture, eye for eye, tooth for tooth. Whatever injury he inflicted on this person, the same is to be inflicted on him. Whoever kills an animal is to make restitution for it, but whoever kills a person is to be put to death. You are to have the same law for the resident alien and the native, because I am the Lord your God. After Moses spoke to the Israelites, they brought the one who had cursed to the outside of the camp, and they stoned him. So the Israelites did as the Lord had commanded Moses. Okay, so in Leviticus 24:1-4, the Lord told Moses to tell the Israelites that they had to bring pure oil of pressed olives for the light so the lamp can keep burning regularly. Aaron had to tend to it continually from evening until morning. before the Lord outside of the curtain of the testimony in the tabernacle. Aaron would be in charge of the lamps on the pure gold lampstand before the Lord. The lamps in the tabernacle, standing on a solid gold lampstand, were the only source of light for the tabernacle. These lamps had to be constantly cared for, supplied with pure olive oil, and their wicks trimmed. This care made the lamps burn continually. It was important that the light from the oil lamp shine continually. God did not want his tabernacle to be left in darkness. Let's park here. Ladies, as we are listening for instructions, let's ask God to give us some light to help guide our way. Light has been used as a guiding instrument for a very long time. God doesn't want us to walk around in the dark not knowing where we are now or where we are going in the future. If Jesus is the light of the world, then use him so that he can light your path. John 8:12 says, I am the light of the world. He who follows me will not walk in the darkness, but will have the light of life. That's John 8:12. In Leviticus 24:5-9, the Lord told Moses how to make and take care of the bread for the tabernacle. The Israelites would take fine flour and bake 12 loaves. Each loaf had to be made with 4 quarts of flour. They had to be arranged in 2 rows. 6 to a row, on the pure gold table before the Lord. They had to put frankincense near each row so that it may serve as a memorial portion for the bread and a food offering to the Lord. The bread should be cut out before the Lord. The bread should be set out before the Lord every Sabbath day as a permanent covenant obligation on the part of the Israelites. It belonged to Aaron and his sons. They had to eat it in a holy place, for it is the holiest portion for him from the food offerings to the Lord. The 12 cakes of bread were arranged in an orderly way on the table of the showbread, which stood opposite the golden lampstand in the tabernacle. They were equally divided into 2 rows, representing the 12 tribes of Israel in the presence of the Lord in his tabernacle. Significantly, God wanted the fellowship fresh. The bread was to be replaced every Sabbath. He didn't want a stale communion with his people, but a continually fresh relationship. Let's park here. Ladies, we need to keep our relationship with God fresh. We have to come to him with different types of conversations. We can't just come to him all the time with the same thing. God likes to keep us fresh so that we won't get complacent where we are. My friend told me recently, girl, keep your head on a swivel. Be willing to make changes quickly. Listen to God and be willing to do what he says. She said, don't ask too many questions, because the point of the swivel is to have your trust in God. Psalms 37:4-6 says, delight yourself in the Lord, and he will give you the desires of your heart. Commit your way to the Lord. Trust in him, and he will act. He will bring forth your righteousness as the light and your justice as the noonday. That is Psalms 37:4-6. In Leviticus 24:10-12, we are hearing about a case of blasphemy. The son of an Israelite mother and an Egyptian father was among the Israelites, and a fight broke out in the camp between this woman's son and the Israelite man. Her son cursed and blasphemed the name, and they brought him to Moses. The mother's name was Shelomith, a daughter of Debri of the tribe of Dan. The son was put in custody until the Lord's decision could be made clear to them. This man, half Egyptian and half Hebrew, was part of the mixed multitude that went with Israel out of Egypt. The man committed the crime of blasphemy, which is to attack someone, especially God, with your words. It is somewhat like the modern idea of verbal abuse, but especially directed against God. Let's park here. Ladies, my sister told me recently that she has learned that just because something needs to be said doesn't mean she has to be the one who says it. I love that. I'm adding that to my new bag of tricks that I'm titling Ways to Handle Life's Lessons. Ways to Handle Life's Lessons. That's my new my bag of tricks. Yep, sometimes I need to be silent, because if I say something, then they're going to say something. And then we both going to be talking and nobody going to be listening. And then I failed the lesson. And I might have to have the same conversation again, but with a different person, because remember what I said in the beginning, the same lesson will appear in different forms until you learn to respond differently. Psalms 119 and 114 says, "You are my place of quiet retreat. I wait for you, for your word to renew me." I'm going to say it again. Psalms 119 and 114 says, "You are my place of quiet retreat. I will wait for your word to renew me." In Psalms 24, 13 through 14, the Lord spoke to Moses and told him the punishment for the woman's son. The son was to be taken outside of the camp, and all who heard him laid their hands on his head, and the congregation was to stone him. God commanded execution by stoning for several reasons. First, stones were plentiful. More importantly, it was so that the community could participate in the execution. This was both a strong warning and a way of saying this man has not only sinned against God, he has also sinned against the community. Let's park here. Ladies, you know I've said before, I don't have to experience the lesson to get the lesson. This is something that I can listen and hear, and my gut would be like, yeah, nope. We don't have to do that to see if we're going to get a different outcome. I would be like, oh, they did what? They said what? Oh, and God did what? Oh, okay. Nope, I don't need to experience that. Be careful about the wolf in sheep's clothing. Because once you take the clothes off, ladies, guess what? They still a wolf. 1 Samuel 26 and 24 says, "And indeed, as your life was valued much this day in my eyes, so let my life be valued much in the eyes of the Lord. And let him deliver me out of all tribulation." 1 Samuel 26 and 24. In Leviticus 24, 15 through 16, the Lord told Moses what would happen if anyone else cursed God and bared his sin. Anybody who blasphemed the name of the Lord will be put to death by all of the congregation stoning him. This applied to the stranger as well as anyone born in the land. Let's park here. This is an example of talking and listening. Who remembers growing up? And if you had company over your house and you had that friend, the stranger to your house, that you had to explain the house rules to. You had to say what we could do and what we couldn't do. And you had to also say, look, I know you might can do that at your house, but you can't do that here. And if you do, it's not going to be pleasant. Those instructions that were given out could have been a matter of life and death before your friend, because my mother didn't play. If I got in trouble and if they got in trouble, we all got in trouble. She didn't care who your parents were, but guess what? My friends respected that, and they always wanted to come back. And when they did, they knew the rules and they didn't get in trouble again. Proverbs 22 and 6 says, "Train up a child in the way he should go, and when he is old, he will not depart from it." Proverbs 22 and 6. In Leviticus 24, 17 through 18, the Lord told Moses the punishment for murder and unlawful killing of animals. Whoever killed a man shall be put to death. Whoever killed an animal unlawfully shall make it right by giving an animal for an animal. When the animal of another was killed without permission, restitution was required. This showed the value and dignity of animal life. Yet the person who wrongly killed an animal was not a murderer and did not have to die for their wrong, only make good with money or another animal. This showed the difference between human life and animal life. Let's park here. Ladies, God has a great value on human life, and we're going to tackle this verse as if we're speaking negatively over someone's life by killing their spirit, tearing down their self-esteem, and trying to take away their joy. We have so much power in our voice, and I don't think we even realize it. We can be mighty persuasive in our tone, but on the other hand, that same voice can be used to speak hatred. So be careful how you use your voice, ladies. Remember, in Proverbs 18 and 21, the tongue has the power of life and death, and those who love it will eat its fruit. So speak life so you can eat the fruit. In Leviticus 24, 19 through 22, the Lord told Moses how punishment should be handed down for other cases. If any man inflicts a permanent injury on his neighbor, whatever he has done is to be done to him. Fracture for fracture, eye for eye, tooth for tooth. Whoever kills an animal is to make restitution for it, but whoever kills a person is to be put to death. This applies both to the natural born Israelite and the stranger. This law did not mean that the eye of an offender would be literally gouged out of his head if he took the eye of another man. The law of Moses had a system of financial restitution in such cases. For example, if a slave loses an eye of the one responsible is not to be plucked out, but rather the slave is to be given his freedom as compensation for the eye. Let's park here. Couple of questions for you. What have you lost, ladies? What has been fractured? What can't you see anymore because your vision has been clouded? And what are you trying to get your lick back for? And now you ask yourself, self, because you know this is personal, is it worth it? Another trick that I'm adding to my trick bag is I'm reconciling my checks and balances. That's going in my trick bag. I'm reconciling my checks and balances. If my balance, which is my bank account, my patience, or my health balance is negatively being affected, then I gotta check out. Romans 8:18 says, I consider that our present suffering are not worth comparing with the glory that will be revealed in us. Romans 8:18 says, I consider that our present suffering are not worth comparing with the glory that will be revealed in us. In Leviticus 24 and 23, Moses told the Israelites what God told him, and they listened. The one who had cursed was brought outside of the camp, and he was stoned to death. This verse is important because it demonstrates to us that the law of God was not given to Israel for interesting facts or mere guidelines. God expected them to obey it. Here they obeyed, even when it was difficult. Let's park here. Lastly, ladies, God talked with these Israelites. They listened, and then they did what God told them to do, even when it was difficult. It is easy to do what God tells us to do when it's simple and fun, but when it takes work, it becomes difficult and it costs us something. That's when we act like we don't want to hear what God has to say, or because it is not what we wanted to hear, we ignore him. By ignoring him, we don't benefit from the can we talk conversation. The last question I want to leave you ladies with tonight is, what are you going to do when you hear God's voice the next time say, we need to talk? Are you going to talk with him? Are you going to listen to what he has to say? And then are you going to follow his instructions? I want to leave y'all with this poem by C.R. Clarke. I talk to Jesus. That's what it's called. I talk to Jesus. When I'm lost and feeling lonely and I think that no one cares, when the day closes in around me and my eyes well up with tears, when my friends all desert me and my family doesn't understand, self-esteem goes down to zero and my heart turns to despair, I talk to Jesus. Jesus talks back to me. He shows me the good things that I've been told, that I've been too blind to see. He shows me I still have friends. They were really there all the time. He shows me my twisted life was mostly just in my mind. I talk to Jesus, and he gives me peace within. He gave me a new life. Now he wants to use that life through. I always wonder just what he sees in me. I guess I already know. It's just that he loves me. Okay, so before I tie this together, anything? I'll make sure y'all get it. Anything? Okay, let's tie it together. Hold on.
Speak to my heart, Holy Spirit, give me the words that will bring new life. Words on the wings of the morning, the dark night will fade away.
If you
Speak to my heart now.
speak to my heart,
Holy Spirit,
message of
love to encourage me
lifting my heart,
from despair. Love me and
care for me.
speak to my heart now. Oh Lord,
Speak to my heart, Holy Spirit,
give me the
give me
words
the
now.
words
The words,
that
oh my,
words on the wings of the morning,
yeah.
my dark nights will fade. Speak to my heart,
Oh my,
my heart,
speak to me.
Holy Spirit,
Message of love,
message of love
message of love now.
to encourage me.
Oh,
Lifting my heart from despair.
how you love me, care for me.
To my heart,
Oh my,
to my heart,
that's what I want you to do.
to my heart,
'Cause I'm waiting to hear from you.
my heart,
Hey, that's what I want you to do.
to my heart.
Speak to my heart, Lord. Oh, give me your holy word. If I can hear from you, then I'll know what to do. I won't go on, never go on my own. Just let your spirit guide, and let your word abide.
Speak to my heart, Lord.
Oh my,
Your holy,
be your holy word.
I can hear from you.
If I can hear,
Then I'll know what
then I know what to do.
I won't go alone.
So that I won't go.
I'll never go on my own.
No,
Your spirit guide,
guide me, Lord.
let your word abide. Speak to my heart, Lord.
Speak to me.
Give me your holy,
Give me your holy word now.
hear from you.
Say if I can hear
I'll
from,
know what
then I'll know what to
I won't
do.
go alone.
Said I'll never go alone,
Never
Jesus.
go on my
Never go
own.
on my
Your
own.
spirit guide,
Guide me, Lord.
let your word
Oh, speak to
my heart, Lord.
just speak,
Give me
Jesus.
your holy,
Come on, let me know what to
I
please.
can't hear from you.
God, I gotta hear your
And I
voice.
know what
I'll be able to make my choice. Said I'll never go by myself, no. God, I really need your help.
spirit guide,
Got me on through the night. And I know it will be alright. I'm ready, Lord. Said that I'm ready. Said that I'm ready. Ready. Said that I'll never go. Said that I'll never go. No. Not on my own.
All right, what did we learn, ladies? What did we learn? Well, I'm gonna tell you, I'm gonna go first. I learned about all of those feasts. I know how we got Pentecost. I knew because we had went over a couple times, the Yom Kippur, the Rosh Hashanah. I knew though, I figured those, but just to see how they all coincided together, that was something big for me. So I was really happy to learn that. So I said, yes, Marianne, me, you, and Toya that's on here. We all have the same birthday. So happy early birthday, Marianne. Yes, happy birthday.
Happy birthday, ladies.
Happy early birthday, ladies.
Thank
Happy
you,
birthday.
Happy birthday.
Happy
thank
birthday.
you.
April 14th is a good day.
Yes. My verse is Esther 4:14. We was perfectly created for a time such as this. That is my verse. Yes. What else? What else did anybody learn? Or any final thoughts that you want to share? Anything?
Hold on. Danielle, with you just said that on my wall is actually that verse with the lion.
Absolutely. Esther 4:14. We are perfectly created
It's
for a
so
time
pretty.
such as this. That's why I sign Bible study like that. We're perfectly created. Yep. What else?
Thought what the holidays meant as well, because I kept wondering
Yes.
what they were. It used to get me upset because I'm like, why are these kids out of school? They don't got nothing to do with that. And I didn't know what it was.
Now
But
you
now I
know. Now you
know it is
know. Yep.
important.
It is
Mhm,
very important.
mhm.
I was like, oh wow. I mean, I was like really like, oh my God, I really learned this. And it's funny because it's a lady reached out and was like, I'm gonna need help with these feasts. And I was like, I got you. I've been studying it all. I've been studying it to be able to give it to y'all so we could, understand it. So I'm hope you guys got a better understanding of these feasts. Any other thoughts?
I never heard of this, the Sukkot. I
Me
never heard of it.
neither. I never heard of that one. That was a new one. Yep. So I guess that's not one to get off for.
Mhm.
This made me cry today. This definitely
Oh,
it did. Like I had
oh.
an incident earlier where I felt like I was out of my body. Like you ever, when a moment someone makes you that mad and it's just like you can't, like I just was like, as soon as I did it, I stopped. I said, God, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Like I need to work on this.
Hit that a
Seriously.
couple weeks ago. I cried for like 2 days from that. So I definitely get that. Yes. I get it. We gotta put new tricks in our bags, ladies. We gotta put
Yes.
new tricks in our bags. My
What was
trick.
that song called? That
Oh, that's
song was,
"Speak to My Heart" by Donnie McClurkin. I love that song.
I'm
I
gonna add to my
loved it.
gospel list. Thank you.
Yes, not a problem. Not a problem. Speak to my heart. Yes. Yes, Marianne. Yes, me, you, and Toya. We on here. We all got the same birthday. Yes, Esther 4:14. When I finally came across that verse one year, I was like, wait a minute. Perfectly created for a time such as this. Yes, I am so we all perfectly created, not just us that's born on 4:14. We are all perfectly created and we are chosen for a time such as this. Any other last thoughts? Anything before we go?
Wrote down the poem you said. The poem, I like
Yes.
that a lot.
I found that. Yeah, I found that.
I felt that. I was like, I've been there. And all the points that he was saying, or he or she, I was like, I definitely been there. So that was a really good poem.
Yes, I love that poem. So y'all, we almost finished, y'all. We almost finished. Leviticus. Let's see. I'm going through it right now. We have 25 left. I'm trying to see 25, 26, and 27. I hate to leave let me see how these other ones are. I hate to leave like one verse left, but we'll figure it out because we might do 27 and then that's when we recap. I don't think they're pretty long, so I don't know if I'll be able to tie it all together before we recap it, but we'll see. If it's anything that's repetitive, I might see what we could do. But if not, we'll just do 27 and then we'll tie in the review of the whole chapter. But we're gonna be moving to numbers within the next couple of weeks. I'm excited. We are moving through. Thank y'all all ladies for coming, and y'all know I can't wait to keep it real with y'all. See y'all next week, same time, same place. And good night, y'all.
Good night.
Thank
Happy early
you.
birthday.
Thank you
Good
so
night.
much.
Happy birthday.
Good night.
Thank you
Happy
so
birthday,
much.
Happy
ladies. Good
birthday.
night.
Yes, thank you.